Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists Podcast, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. And no, you're not having technical difficulties. We actually just have our cameras turned off to have a little bit of a reveal between us. Blake and I decided to dress up for our very special Halloween episode discussion today.
Oh wait, it's for the podcast? I thought you just wanted to just change things up a little bit.
Well, little column A, little column B.
Put a little spice in our relationship.
That's right. You gotta keep things fresh.
True.
100%. But I'm Will. That's Blake. You still can't see us, but I forgot to say that part. But my friend, should we
You got a dope avatar, by the way. I like the little penguin.
Bro, I love him. Nate even like a year or so ago offered to like make me a new avatar for Twitch, and I was like, man, I just love this penguin too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just have the Discord one, like a loser.
No, we gotta get this man an avatar, y'all. Be sure to shame him in the comments and in the Discord.
Okay, well, I could have just left it at let's get you a new one. But
sure. It's getting spicy, getting zesty, man.
All right.
Should we do the reveal?
Let's do the reveal.
All right. Should we do like a countdown or?
Let's do a countdown. Wait, I gotta figure out where my button is. Okay, we're good.
All right. And y'all, I may have to adjust our cameras since we didn't get to look at this beforehand. So y'all bear with me if that's the case.
True.
All right. You want to count us down?
All right. 3, 2, 1. Boom. Oh my gosh. Yours is so good.
Bro, you're looking dapper, man.
Bro, I was going for kind of like the old-timey professional DM kind of feel. The pre-vest days.
Yeah.
Took a little trip over to Goodwill.
I thought you were specifically. I thought you were like a Candela DM because that's the immediate vibe I got.
Yes, that is it.
That is exactly right,
dude. Yours is awesome, bro. When you told me you needed some time, I was like, I wonder what he could be doing. And
it was definitely this makeup. I needed Ashley's help, and she had to go somewhere, so I was like, just go ahead and help me out. Let's get this done.
She's like, but it's 4 hours in advance. You get like the first stroke in. Is it supposed to burn? I don't know.
It was weird, man. As somebody who has not dealt with this before, like getting your eyes touched and your lips touched, it was sensations I'm not used to.
For people who stumble across this episode like 3 years from now and it's like not Halloween,
Like, what are they doing?
Yeah. So I like the shirt too. Thank
you. I didn't really have I was like, what's a pirate shirt? But I was like, you know what? They partied, so he's wearing his party Hawaiian shirt.
Well, I was thinking you're one of the pirates from episode, what was it, 74? 73?
Yeah.
So
specifically Kyle.
But I didn't want to say it if it wasn't that, for you to be like, oh, yeah, you're Kyle. Okay.
Yeah, you can't
name tag then.
Yeah, so you can't see it, but I have like a name tag image on my side of the screen.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, I just realized my other ring light's not working. That's a bummer. Well, here we are. It is, we had a little special Halloween episode of Critical Role. You and I doing a little bit of a special Halloween themed breakdown of said episode. And if you guys are just tuning in, we like to talk about all things Critical Role related, as well as in other stuff too. And we always like to plug the Discord. In fact, we're having a little bit of a watch party tonight on the Discord. So if you like hanging out with people who also enjoy Critical Role and other things D&D related, we'll have a link to the Discord in the description of this episode. And we like to say that everybody is welcome, no matter how casual or feverish you are regarding Critical Role.
Yeah, so absolutely, come join us. There's been we've had like a lot of new people join recently from the watch parties, and it's been fun to have people talking all the nerdy stuff they enjoy. So definitely come hang out with us.
It's hard for me to talk to you in that. Just be mesmerized, I guess. Now, are you gonna double up? Do you have like another Halloween party you're gonna go to?
No.
Okay.
It's just for this.
Maybe don't talk about it then. Outside of friends and family. Oh, it's for a Halloween party. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't ask any more questions.
Bro, I got a Halloween party. This is gonna be my getup. I got this. I got D&D. I got a Halloween themed D&D session coming up. I'll be wearing this again. I'm all about,
Listen, will you
you
stop
gotta
shaming me with your social life? I'm
well,
sorry, okay?
you gotta maximize, we spent $5 at Goodwill, so we gotta make it go the distance.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're just boring. I don't think we're doing anything, but maybe later. I don't know. Nothing planned though. Like this had no other purpose besides you and I right now.
Sure.
But maybe I need to make something happen.
I can dig it, you know?
Yeah. Also,
All right,
also
well,
you can't
yeah.
see. I've got instead of my normal background, it's a ship behind me.
Ooh, I
Forgot you
can
couldn't
dig it.
see, so I wanted to paint the full picture for you.
Let me actually make sure I got my notes in the correct place before we begin talking about this episode. Good
Indubitably.
stuff. Yes.
So while he's looking that up, before we
Ready?
launch in, a couple other things. Worlds Beyond Number is back. I think we talked about that last time, but we still haven't recorded our episode on that, but that's coming soon. Also Loki, we're still doing, and I still haven't watched it yet, but I know you have, and I've heard a lot of people say the episode is just crazy. So I'm gonna
Very
watch
good.
that today, and that will be coming soon from us as well. And then we will be talking about the Mighty Nine reunion as well. But we got to figure out details on when all these things are happening. But all those things are coming, so be on the lookout for that.
Yes.
All right. Anything else before we get started here?
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty. Well, in that case, we will jump into it. And for those of you watching on YouTube or wherever you're watching, you may know that we love to do a recap before we dive into our proper discussion. And what we do is we cut that recap out and host it separately for your convenience. So if you find yourself just on that recap and you want to hear our full thoughts on this episode, it'll be linked down in the description below. But okay, without further ado, let's dive into episode 76, A Gathering of Heroes. So, this episode opens with Bell's Hells having just teleported from the Shattered Teeth to Whitestone, but not without a few hiccups along the way, as Sam had to roll for the teleport, rolled poorly, and then rolled again and was successful. But basically, everyone took a bunch of force damage before ultimately making it to plopping in front of the Sun Tree. Basically, immediately a Pale Guard runs up to them and says that, hey, Lord Percival is expecting you, and escorts them to the castle. They're actually led to like this secret room in the castle, and it's a like workshop, one of Percy's workshops, where he is tinkering along with Dancer, Imahara Joe, Verna the Viper, who is a Lagamore, I believe they're called. And everyone quickly catches up, and while that's happening, Lady Allura Vysoren actually comes down and joins everyone as well. She tells them that she is familiar with lewdness and simulacrums. I think I'm saying that right, but that word always messes me up. And she talks about how somebody of his station and capability could actually have many simulacrums. Then everybody basically takes a look at this harness, which is what everyone was tinkering on, and it looks repaired and polished compared to when Bell's Hells, left it here. Allura, having just joined, takes out some tools and basically makes the final few like arcane inscriptions on this thing, before asking them, like, do you understand what you have here? And basically tells them that stuff like this has been used throughout the history of Arcana. Devices that are similar are called like power stills, but this one is like way more elegant and larger and very, very difficult to craft. She says that the fact Ludinus once crafted one is a testament to his skill and ability. She also says that using this on sentient beings is severely amoral, but she supports it being used against Ludinus, and she asks that once they're done with it, they return it to the Cobalt Soul to be destroyed. And they ultimately agree to that. Ashton then takes out the Shard of Raushan to kind of get everyone's take on this, and everyone is amazed by it. And I think they dive into this a bit later, so I'll touch more on it there. But he basically is like, is this something we could absorb with the harness? And they're like, well, you've got a lot going on. Maybe you shouldn't be the one to do it. But in any case, the whole group wants to test the harness on something much smaller to begin with. So they know that it can permanently take enchantments from different magical items and creatures. So Chetney puts it on to be the test dummy, and they try to think of what they could test it on. And ultimately, Percy has some magical silverware and dishware brought down. And so they like place it in front of this harness that Chetney's wearing, and it like essentially like sucks up the magic essence of this thing, leaving behind only like black charred ash. It's at this point that Matt hands Travis the magical item card,
Oh
and he
yeah.
tells Chet he gains 5 health. The magical item is really cool and it's really
Mhm.
long, so I'm not going to go over it here in the recap, but we'll talk about it in the discussion. So basically, everyone freaks out and they're talking about that, and then they return to the shard of Raushan, being like, okay, what would happen if we absorb something like that, and who should be the one to do it? And it's at this point that Allura takes a look at Ashton, specifically like the Dunamancy in their head, and she calls out that this is very akin to Dunamancy, and she says it predates the primordials. The balance of life stems from it. What's in your head is like a condensed focus for it, almost like a half beacon, if you will. She says the fact that you're standing here is a marvel in and of itself, and along with the shard of Comort already being inside of you, you're possibly the greatest weapon that we have. It's at this point she suggests not putting the shard of Raushan in them as well, just because that could get real bad real quick. Everyone then decides to kind of think on it, and they take their leave to go get some food. Everyone leaves except Percy and Allura, who stay to have a private conversation. But before they leave, Dancer stops F.C.G. and tells him that she understands what happened between them wasn't like really F.C.G. She's not 100% comfortable or okay yet, but she just wanted to say that she sees the good things they're doing with the new group, and just wanted to let them know that before they head off to this, very dangerous mission. FCG thanks her and appreciates her, giving him a shot at living to begin with. Then they kind of have their little moment. Everyone leaves, but Laudna leaves Pate in the room to spy on Percy and Allura. And Percy basically just says this is all very upsetting. He isn't against making Whitestone a sanctuary, but he also doesn't want to make it a target like it has been in the past. And now he has much more to worry about, like his family. And can we maybe take this elsewhere? Allura tells him like, hey, there's bigger fish to fry. Like the moon's locked in the sky, aliens are invading. Like Whitestone isn't the number one priority here of the bad guys even. So plus it has a lot of protections. Like it's gonna be fine. She basically says. Then she looks at Pate, who is invisible, but she like flicks her fingers and Pate is like thrown out of the room. Um, Back to Bell's Hills, who basically is having lunch now when a bunch of people enter the room, mostly Pale Guards, but also Keyleth and a couple of others. And the guards say their presence is requested and direct them to a war room, essentially. So they make their way to Percy's office, and inside is Percy, Allura, Ebenold Kai, Keyleth, and an older woman who resembles Keyleth. And that's where we go to break on the first half.
Yeah, so coming back from the break, we have this meeting in the war room. This older woman is Vilya, Keyleth's mom. And essentially they have basically what is like the state of Exandria. Like what's the state of what is happening right now? And there's a lot of details that are mentioned. One of which is that we do get confirmation that the Malleus Key is holding Ruidus, and it is the peak of the solstice. Like it's holding it in that sort of time frame of the solstice, and that this scrambling of magical energy that we've experienced over several episodes is originating from that Malleus Key. They also talk about how originally there was an idea about sort of attacking the Malleus Key, but because of the disenchantments of a variety of things, there have been a large number of threats that have popped up all over Exandria that have forced each kingdom to sort of have to focus in on itself. The only kingdom, or kingdom maybe not the right word, but the only entity that's been able to sort of approach the Malleus Key and create this sort of offensive has been Vasselheim. However, we get more confirmation that healing magic is stifled, and in general, there seems to be some kind of magical, anti-magical dampening thing coming from the Malleus Key. Where the conversation goes is basically like we need more information. We need to know what to do. And the party basically offers themselves as, hey, we could be the scouting party. Like we could be the people who could go in and make this happen and figure out, what more information so we can make a better decision. And I don't remember if it was like actually asks like, "Oh, would you want to do that or not?" But regardless, Chetney makes a joke that he's like, "Hey, we're expendable, so go ahead and send us." And they're like, "Hey, we'll go do it. We'll make it happen, but we're gonna need lots of like magical items and things that are going to be able to help us." Allura says that she's willing to see like what's available. They do ask Lord Percy like, "Hey, do you have like 8 legendary weapons that can help us?" And Percy's like, "No, I don't have anything like that." There is an insight check, and it seems like Percy's not being totally forthcoming. They also mentioned the betrayer gods, and it's like, well, who has a connection to the betrayer gods? And naturally, we know that one of the party members does. Fern, by the way, as they're talking about the future of Exandria and like going on this mission, Fern does make a joke about, I want to make the world safe for my child, which gets everyone, there's kind of this has come up before as a running joke. And she's like, Mister, my child, which maybe this would be like a great thing to cut at some point of all the jokes with Fern being pregnant throughout this campaign. Funny. So all that to say, they're like, "Hey, we'll do it. We'll make it happen. Send us off and we'll hopefully not die and get you the information that you need." And they're not just only suggesting to go to the excavation site. They're actually suggesting even going up to Ruidus and getting like a firsthand look at the moon. War room ends. There's this funny like back and forth like, "Good day to you, sir," and to you, and to you. That happens between all the characters. Yeah, doctor. Orem goes after Keyleth as Keyleth is leaving, and Keyleth, I think like rubs his cheek or something, like, and says something like, "That's from your mom." And basically says like, "Hey, keep an eye on Imogen. I know her mom is Liliana, who's very close to Luidus in this whole thing." Orem basically says, "I think we can trust her. I think it's going to be okay." But also in the meeting, Imogen had mentioned that, hey, getting close to the beam has really made her feel like she's losing herself, like losing her self-control, like she's really drawn to it. So Keyleth is understandably a bit nervous about it. Aside from this, the party also continues chatting about what their next step should be until Orem has a sense that they're being watched, with his massive, ridiculous perception. And they realize it's actually Gwendolyn DeRollo, who they had met the previous time they had come to Whitestone. And so Orem's basically like, "Hey, I know you're there. Hello." Gwendolyn comes out. She has like this little skeleton doll toy thing that she's playing with, and Laudna immediately sees an opportunity to connect with her. Laudna has this very disturbing moment of like, "Hey, you want to see something cool?" and like peels open the skin on her chest to show her sternum, and then invites Gwendolyn to touch it.
Super weird.
Yeah, it's just not really the casual thing I would tell a child. Yeah. "Hey, come on over." But interestingly enough, Gwendolyn touches it, immediately shudders, and runs away. They follow after her, knock on her door, and I think it's Imogen actually knocks on her door and is like, "Hey, what happened? What's wrong?" And Gwendolyn is basically like, "She hates me." And she's like, "What, Laudna? No, Laudna doesn't hate you." And Gwendolyn's like, "No, like I've never felt anything like that before. Like I've never felt hate like that." And then Imogen and Laudna realize that it is Delilah within Laudna who naturally, of course, hates the DeRollos. They need to kill some more time during the day. They can't use the harness again till the next day, or they can, but there's a risk of it breaking permanently. So they're like, "What else do we want to go do?" They decide to go to one of the temples, a couple different temples. They go first to the temple of the Matron of Ravens, which is actually just like this small hovel altar, really. And there is a statue of what seems to be the winged character that they saw at the excavation site. They go in through this tiny door down into a basement where they meet this oh my gosh, it reminds me of the Always Sunny guy who's like on drugs always. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, like the voice is very similar, but
one of the main characters?
No, like a side character who like over the episodes gets like worse and worse off.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about.
You know,
he's like the priest or something, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So just this very like odd character who's like, "Hey, how's it going?" Othanon, I think was his name,
Mhm.
Arthenon, and they're making like some small talk. It's just a very awkward person, and they're like, "Hey, so like, how does this thing work?" And there are these 5 sarcophaguses that he's like, "Yeah, jump on in and see what happens." So they jump inside, and as they're in the sarcophagus, each sarcophagi they have, or like rather like tombs, I guess, they have this experience that's not unlike when they were descending into the tree of atrophy's sort of domain or area, where it's like this black endless void, and they look to see this figure who's wearing a mask, and as the figure takes off the mask, they see just this endless void in place of a face. They look up into the sky to see the same figure and like these large chains that are stretching down from the figure down to them. I think it's Ashton who begins to try to like climb up the chains. And as he does this, it shatters the chains. The matron, Matt admits this is the matron. The matron then like bursts into a bunch of ravens herself. I'm pretty much making this sound like a drug trip, but
It kind
I'm
of
not giving
was.
I'm not giving it super good justice, but they feel like in this moment that they are seen. Like this is like a nod of acknowledgement from the matron of ravens. All that to say, they leave the temple. F.C.G wants to go visit the temple, the Horizon Temple, the temple of the Changebringer, where they run into Osley, who was like the steward of the temple that they had encountered previously in their last
Yeah.
trip. And FCG is like, "Hey, do you mind if I pray?" And Osley's like, "Of course, that's what this is there for." FCG goes to the statue of the Changebringer, prays, and basically says, as we're so used to FCG doing, "Hey, if anything bad is going to happen, if there's any way you can make it happen to me instead of my friends, that'd be really great." This seems to activate the statue, and the Changebringer's voice begins speaking to FCG, and basically says that there are dark days ahead, but in place of those dark days, if there's a hero that's willing to step up, that some may be saved, or something to that effect. And FCG also realizes that the Changebringer is scared, and that basically no one is safe from whatever could be coming, whatever could be happening. They leave, and then they make one last trip. They had joked about it earlier in the episode about finding Whitestone Andy, this character from several episodes ago, where Laudna talks about. I think it was actually in Laudna's memories of her getting picked on and having dirt thrown at her by this person, Whitestone
Yeah.
Andy. Well, they go to the base of the Sun Tree, and they find this poor guy who's like selling crepes, like out of this little like food truck.
Yeah.
And they're just being huge douchebags to him. Imogen has this guy, his name's Andrew, and his age kind of checks out too. He's in his 50s, Lotta's in her 50s. Imogen is like, asked for like this really big order, and then she's like, "Oh, you know what? I'm allergic. Never mind." So the person like has to waste it, and they're like making all these jokes about like, "Hey, you ever throw dirt at little kids?" And he's like, "What? Like, who are you people?" And then finally they're like, "This is getting like a bit ridiculous." So they fortunately move on from him and decide to basically wrap up the day, to go to sleep, and ideally start the day tomorrow using the harness to work on the Shard of Roshan. So that is where episode 76 ends, A Gathering of Heroes. And if you're watching just the recap, don't forget there's a link to watch the full breakdown. We want to know what you thought about the episode, and don't forget the Discord link as well if you want to chat about the episode.
Pop, pop.
Woo.
Alrighty. Also, yes, I mean, clearly this was the Halloween episode, which is why we're dressed up, but they were all the Lord of the Rings cast, in case anyone forgot or wanted that reminder. Yeah.
Fantastic episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, costumes, excuse me. Great costumes.
They were so fun. I kept cracking up at just like not like just at the costumes, like when they were like giving different like speeches, like as Gandalf or whatever.
Yeah.
And did you remember last year when Matt was Gambit and had those contacts in?
Yeah.
That's what I kept thinking. I was like, oh my gosh, at least it's not that, because that was so distracting.
Yeah. His costume was great,
Yeah.
honestly. I think probably Laudna's was my favorite. She did an awesome Legolas.
Yeah.
Her, or I mean, all the hobbits were great too, honestly. But her or well, geez, now that I'm saying it, now I'm thinking of each person. Sam's Gimli was awesome, but I was gonna say Travis's Aragorn was like
Yeah.
pristine,
He kept
but
doing like blue steel and like smoldering
yeah,
like
yeah. So, but yeah, another great episode, fun episode. Um, man, let me just throw this out there because I don't know really where you want to start. It seems like the party is potentially beginning this scouting mission where they're going to go leave and they're going to report back. I have a worry that this is actually not going to be a scouting mission. Like it's not going to be, we've checked it out. All right, let's get back. We
yeah.
go back to Keyleth. But like, this might be the last time. It's very reminiscent of an EXU season 1 when they were in what was the town? Starts with a B.
By Rodin?
I rode in, and there was like the big talent show, probably the best episode of that whole season.
Yeah.
But they knew they were about to go off on this little trip after the fact. And I kind of had the same impression. I was like, is this the last time that Bell's Hells is going to have like a moment of respite before, we don't have, I mean, we have probably quite a few episodes left, but, who's to say where those episodes will take place. But I don't know. I'm feeling a little nervous. That plus the Changebringers sort of like omen or ominous, speech to F.C.G. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I I agree. I'm wondering like, are they about to go? And if like, cause they just got the harness. We know obviously they have these primordial shards to deal with, but I was wondering like, are they gonna go at least for some amount of time? Not that it would be like a long arc or anything, but maybe a couple episodes go and try to like get each person some buffs with the harness and then go on the scouting mission. If that's the case, I'm definitely with you that like that's like the end game. But if they're like going immediately right now to Ruidus to scout, I guess I could see them coming back and then like going back, but I don't know. I'm with you on the vibes though. It definitely feels like the calm before the storm. And it also feels like it's not going to be as simple as like peeking in and coming right back, like something's going to happen up there. And I guess is it like the final fight of the campaign or, I don't know. But I'm with you. I agree with the vibes and like what it feels like we're getting into.
Yeah. I'm
But
also
like
just
what do
curious.
you think they're going to go on any harness stuff? Like what do you think the vibe
Bro,
is there?
I don't want to be a broken record. It feels like there's not time. Like we keep talking about this like for like 30 episodes now that there's not time. But
Yeah.
maybe there's time. I don't know. Like the harness is such a freaking cool item
Yeah.
that it's hard for it to not feel like it's a bit of a not a MacGuffin, but just like okay, they consume the shard and then it like not really be relevant again after that, or not necessarily have like a reason to use it, I guess. So like it feels like it'd be right for them to have like, okay, now that we have this working, what's our plan with it? But
Well, yeah.
on the same token, it's like there's been this standstill at the Bloody Bridge. Allura kind of put a clock on the whole thing of like, hey, this holding of the Apogee Peak is really
Messing
weighing
things
on
up.
right, and like it could destroy Exandria as a whole. So like there's a clock there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, let's say even they use it on the shard. Maybe they used it on like some really small, not important things leading up to the battle because it gives like temporary HP or whatever it was. Which I want to go over the exact item here in a second, but we know
Right.
at least they want or seemingly are planning to use it on Ludinus, right?
Right.
So it's even if it was only the shard, it does have a purpose beyond that, at least as like an important item in the battle. But let me go ahead and read the item really quick so everybody's on the same page. So this is a wondrous item. The elaborate harness marked with runic inscriptions affixes to the torso of a humanoid creature. When activated, any non-artifact magical item placed within the harness's funnel for 1 minute will have its enchantment permanently removed. If a creature of powerful magical essence is physically touching the funnel for 1 minute, their magical essence is temporarily drawn from them, removing any magical ability they have for 24 hours while bestowing a unique benefit upon the wearer until the wearer completes a long rest. This benefit varies depending on the creature. Depending on the rarity of the item in question, the wearer of the harness gains one of the following benefits. Common, 5 temporary hit points. Uncommon, 10. Very rare, the wearer's hit point maximum permanently increases by 5. All attack rolls, saving throws, and ability checks have advantage until they complete a long rest. Legendary, one of the wearer's ability scores is permanently increased by 2, depending on the item, as does your maximum for that score. And some powerful items may bestow additional benefits. If a magical creature touches the harness for 1 hour or more, they are destroyed, and the wearer gains a permanent benefit based on the creature. Once a creature gains a benefit, it cannot benefit from it again until they complete a long rest.
Bro, how's this group ever going to take on lewdness? Like, I mean, like, for real, this guy, we know he's used the harness on the powerful Fey creatures.
Yeah.
I can't remember how many were like marked off, but I mean, your ability score increases by 2 and your maximum also increases, and you get a special bonus if it's, depending on the creature.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been like
hundreds of years,
right? So
at least, I mean, even if we just assume that this one that they now have was his first one, which maybe it wasn't, like maybe he had a harness back in the Calamity days, and that's just, the one they have is just the 5th iteration. But let's just assume it was the first. Then yeah, he's had it for at least like 100 years. He definitely has a new one.
Yeah,
I think. Which,
well,
go ahead.
Sorry, we talked about why doesn't he use this anymore, and the implication must be that he's crafted a better one.
Yeah,
and I think it was even mentioned. It was finally said out loud in this episode that like, hey, maybe he has like innovated on it and come up with a new version. So I 100% agree with you.
Because why leave it behind if it's such a And with that, I want to talk more explicitly about the harness. But while we're here, another thing we've been talking about for a long time are like what exactly are Ludinus's plans here? Like what does he really want? Now knowing how this thing works, I think whatever version he has now, he wants to use on Predathos to like suck up Predathos and give himself that power.
Yeah.
I think it it makes him slightly less of a cool villain, which he's an amazing villain, but I really liked like if he really was just like, I'm doing it for the good of the world, but and he still can be doing that, but the fact that he's like, we don't know this to be true, but if he is like wanting to usurp Predathos, then that's a bit more like narcissistic and selfish.
Maybe not though, because here's what I'll say. 2 things. We mentioned this in the last episode. Was it would be interesting. I think I talked about Die Hard, how Die Hard 3, how the bad guy the whole time it's all about revenge, and then it turns out it's just about money. So I think this trope, or whatever you want to call it, is fine. Like I'm okay with. I know you weren't saying it wasn't fine, but I'm okay if it goes that way. But in terms of like narcissism, it could be. What would be interesting is if Ludinus feels like, okay, I'm going to release Predathos to eat the gods because I hate the gods, and we shouldn't be beholden to the gods. But then what's keeping Predathos from just filling the void and becoming that themselves? Maybe the safest route. I don't trust Predathos. Predathos didn't. I'm not Rudisborn.
Right.
So
right.
maybe the safest route then, I know myself, would be to eat Predathos, eat all the gods, and then now I've certainly made sure that the future I want for Exandria is going to happen.
I like that. I could see that. Man, that man, just so many like what ifs, like, because I feel like anything could happen. Like in terms of like, even if Bell's Hells wins, I still think prior to that, Ludinus could have wiped out some of the gods, or whatever the case may be. Um, but I feel like I'm pretty heavily leaning into the fact that that has to be what he's got going on
Yeah.
with this harness and what we've learned about it. Um, what's interesting though is that, and again, I don't know if Yvonne Trevere is a reliable narrator, but explaining that the gods fled and Predathos chased them essentially was the imagery we got. I guess in that scenario, perhaps that was Ludinus Predathos, but
Mm.
but I don't know. But if we're to take that at face value and not assume that it was Ludinus, then in that scenario, he didn't absorb him, I guess.
Honestly, Ludinus Predathos is a much better. I need to stop saying trope because trope makes it sound like it's cheap, and I don't mean it that way. But I do think it's just great in written stories where you have the clear big bad, but there's like a bigger bad that keeps getting mentioned. But
Mhm.
that one, you don't have like all the nuance and like history with that one that you do this one. And so I think it's just a stronger story if Ludinus does consume Predathos and becomes Predathos Ludinus or whatever. I,
Yeah.
I think that's way more compelling. It's kind of like this up here is kind of like the Final Fantasy thing, which you like beat the villain and then you have to fight
Yeah.
the
Was
final
that
final boss,
was
and you're
that
like,
Final Fantasy 9 where that like
that was like every Final Fantasy game ever, where you're like, who is this guy? Like, who's this boss
the
here? I've
Eldritch
never even
Horror?
heard of
Yeah.
him. Yeah, and you're like, what is this thing? But yeah, so I mean, I'm okay with it either way. I just think it would be really intriguing if the red force chasing after the gods was actually Ludinus, like you said. But seriously though, I'm kind of like, I'm very, and you've watched the first two campaigns, but I'm just we've said this since early on in this campaign of like the power disparity.
Yeah.
Like it just feels with this new revelation about Ludinus that the power gap is impossibly large. And even when they fought its Ludinus's simulacrum, and Aurum was like, "Hey, this character is hundreds of years older than Trent," which I haven't finished the live show. But even that was like ominous and epic with
Yeah.
a bunch of level 20s, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I just don't know. Like they're level 11, but
Yeah.
see what I'm not trying to be long winded here. I'm just like, you can't bring in someone like Vox Machina can't come in to take them out because that feels cheap. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but maybe Otahan becomes the big bad. I don't know, but
I think, yeah, I'm with you. I'm really interested to see how Matt designs the final encounter. If we can just put the generic that title on it. Because you're right. I mean, unless he's severely weakened, like maybe somehow, like maybe they use the harness on him, and that like de-levels him, for lack of a better way to put it, and it's a more even
mm,
fight. Or it's gonna have to be Vox Machina, Mighty Nine, and like some epic grand battle where like maybe Bell's Hells is fighting Odahan over here. Like
yeah.
I don't know like the nuance of how Matt's gonna have it planned out. But like you're right, they're level 11, and this dude is like level 30 basically.
Yeah, pretty
You
much.
know,
Yeah. It's like level
so
20 plus 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 new game plus 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 plus.
yeah,
Like this guy got every unlockable, 100% completion, min maxed. He is Sora who stayed on the island till level 80 before he left the island and
shout out
then
Brian.
actually played the game. Like
Yeah,
I'm just like it's nuts to me trying to like conceptualize it. Um but then again, though, I mean, it feels like even though it feels like we're heading into like the finale esque, I mean, there's still a lot of story to tell in the sense of, well, characters to engage with. Otahan, like we just mentioned, Liliana feels like a big piece of the puzzle. And maybe Liliana would be maybe not Vox Machina. Maybe Liliana would be, the thing that sort of weakens Ludinus, I guess. But
yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like there's a lot of possibilities for like ways you could level the playing field. But I mean, we know that Mighty Nine and Vox Machina are involved. So like, and
Mm.
they like the world's at stake here. Like everyone kind of has to be involved that isn't dealing with other stuff. So like, I don't. I'm really interested to see how Matt like throws this all together. But it definitely feels like this scouting mission was like the level appropriate thing you guys can do. So
Mm.
with that, I feel like that's where we're at now. And something we were talking about, a few minutes ago is if that does lead into like the end game, like what happens from there. But maybe it is like they scout and they do come back and there's a bit longer to go. Maybe they can get some more levels, some harness stuff. I don't know. But there's also, like you said, there's Liliana that could come into play. Allura mentioned that Ashton is like potentially the best weapon they have with all this stuff going on. So maybe there is like a I don't mean MacGuffin in a bad way, but just like in the way that term is used. Like Ashton is like a MacGuffin in some way to weaken Ludinus, or the freaking gods, like maybe at some point they're like, let's our lives are on the line here too. Like, let me divinely empower you and kind of, well, I don't know if you how I guess I won't say this, but we saw an example of kind of like a power up in the Mighty Nine reunion that just happened. Um, so I don't know if that I'm not saying that exact thing would be used here, but clearly that's like a concept that Matt is familiar with. So like maybe there could be I feel like there's lots of ways that the playing field could be leveled potentially. But yeah, on the outside looking in, it definitely is like what can they do? So
Mhm.
excited to see it come together.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like I want to enjoy the ride, but I also, you know me, man. I gotta gotta know all these things. I'm
Spoiler
just curious.
demon.
I wish I knew how many episodes were left, which they don't even know. I mean, they probably have like Matt has like a generic idea of like, yeah, probably a band of this many to that many episodes. Um, KP2 was 140, 48, something like that.
140-ish, and the first one I think was like
Excuse me.
115. But
Hmm.
the
They had
caveat
already
being that they had already played at home for a while in that one.
right.
Um, I would. It feels like we're in the final act.
Hmm.
So I would. We're on. This was episode 76. I would hope we get to 100. Um, but I mean, anything could happen, like you just said. But with where we're at, I doesn't feel like we're gonna get to the 140s.
Yeah,
Because
it
that would mean we're
definitely.
just halfway right now.
Yeah. Well, with how urgent things have been for, I mean, about like 20 episodes now, 30 episodes now. I'm just thinking about like leading up to the Apogee Solstice. It's just hard to imagine. It's just hard to imagine having another 70 episodes.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
I
will
wouldn't be
say that
against it. I love these characters. So,
what I will say is we had this conversation even before 20, 30 episodes ago leading up to the solstice. So similarly, maybe like this, maybe there is like another solstice event that like feels like the climax, but there could be stuff after. So like maybe we all go to Ruidus and Ludinus does consume Prodathos and
mhm.
goes to fight the gods, but maybe the campaign's not over. Like maybe, like that. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just one random theoretical
Yeah.
idea of like we could have this big moment on Ruidus, and yet there's still more story to be told after.
Hmm.
But I would venture to guess that's probably not the case, but you never know.
Hmm. Yeah.
But to cycle back to the harness for a second itself, I really hope not that we need a full arc of it, but I really hope they do go try to like. I mean, obviously they're not going to kill any sentient magical beings. But like, and not that I want them to, but like I want to know what kind of benefits you would get from that. So like, I hope they at least go find some like legendary items um to try this on. Obviously, we have the shard, which was something we talked about I think in our last episode. Um, if for lack of better terminology, Ashton's shard is active, or like is there like it's not like he can use the harness on himself, I guess, but like I want to know. I get at the very least we'll get Raushan's shard consumed and see what that does for somebody. Maybe we get Kamort's, but I hope they like. I just want to see some cool
Yeah.
stuff and some cool like what Matt could come up with for like these, hopefully cool but not game breaking like permanent bonuses.
It does seem like it's going to go to Fern, which was I think our guess originally.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't seem like they've even really considered anyone else. I mean,
yeah.
Ashton aside,
Mhm.
but not that I
Right.
fault them for that because it thematically feels really right for Fern.
Yeah. Well, when Chetney first put it on to like test it, I was like, is Chetney gonna you know?
Yeah.
Travis is like, I consume the shard. Wait, what? So I guess we'll see. I mean, this next episode is probably gonna be a pretty big episode because they're gonna ideally consume the shard and then very like immediately decide what's our next step. Are we going straight to the excavation site, which Orem was ready to go to, 10 episodes ago? Or are we, going to go on this tour around Exandria,
Yeah.
to consume magical items? So, I don't know.
I don't know if so. I'm reading the item again. I probably just don't have the full stats, but in the stats that I wrote down, there's no line about it potentially breaking if you use it more than once. But there is a singular
Yeah,
person can't use it more than once in the same day.
yeah,
But is there an
right.
additional?
Well, it was 20% chance. If you use it again, it has a 20% chance to break,
Okay.
and that increases every additional use.
Okay.
Was what Matt said. So first time you use it, 20%. Second time, 40%, which is also presumably. I think that was maybe it's not presumably. I don't know why it broke in the first place. That Ludinus maybe got greedy and used it too often in the same day. It broke, but also was maybe already working on a new prototype or what have you. But I think that's also why they didn't just absorb the shard right there. I think actually Imogen said something like, "Well, we don't want to risk that, so
Yeah, true.
let's
Is
fill our
it
day with stuff and then try again tomorrow."
is it 20% on the very first one, or
Mm-hmm.
0% and then 20 if you like used it a second time, or is it just 20 anytime you use it?
I think it was 20 if you use it a second time,
Okay,
and then every consecutive attempt in the same day adds 20%.
gotcha. Which so I'm looking at this again. Legendary, they probably aren't going to find too many legendary items to consume. That's the one that increases your ability score. Um, but very rare, permanently increases your HP and gives you advantage on like everything until you have a long rest. That's so good. So like
Yeah.
it feels like it might be worth it to try to use that one. I mean, everyone in Bell's Hells won't be able to do it because they're not going to find, 7. Well, maybe we would, but I doubt they're not going to be able to use it 7 times in one day. But maybe somebody would like risk not sleeping for a night and use it over a couple days or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to imagine at least like 2 or 3 people are going to try to use that before the big fight. Right?
Well, it's my point on the power disparity is like if this thing could give you advantage on your rolls or on your saving throws, like and Ludinus has had something like this for hundreds of years in like a newer version.
Mm-hmm.
This dude's basically a walking god, is the impression I got. So
Yeah. It's about to
um,
literally be potentially.
yeah, yeah.
Which I guess.
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you that yeah, I think the implication might be that hey, final boss, like here's the final checkpoint, here's the final save point. Let's just use this thing up, before we
Yeah.
go in. So I can see that happening.
But if they need to be careful to save it to use on him, then
Right.
maybe they can't just go crazy, crazy. So they need to, if they touched him for 1 minute with it, he would be temporarily weakened. So that's all they really need. Because, I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to use it for 24 hours on him unless they've
Mhm.
already defeated him.
But 1 minute's
A long
one
time.
minute's a really long time. That's
10
10
rounds.
rounds
Yeah.
in combat. So yeah, for people listening every round is 6 seconds. So you would need 10 rounds of holding him, touching it, which is an astronomical amount of time in combat. I think most Critical Role combats are over by the 3rd round, sometimes the 4th round.
Yeah. I
Um,
don't know if there's ever been a 10-round combat. Maybe like once
yeah, I mean,
with one entity. I mean,
yeah, take the average Critical Role combat and triple it, you know? That's how long that you would have to be holding him. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah, I was gonna say something else about this too. Oh, something else I was gonna say too is just a nice little D&D insight. I appreciated Laura Bailey being like, "What's a wondrous item again?" And I like this because you know, you have these people who literally they're playing it every week for years. And I bring this up because I just as a random DM D&D aside, I think sometimes people are a little bit too intense about D&D expertise and like knowing everything and like you know this has come up before we talked about with the counterspell of like it shouldn't work that way and all these
yeah.
kinds of things and um you know I don't know I really have no interesting comment to say about it other than like hey yeah there's someone who plays the game who even they themselves lost track for a second of like what is that item again like what how's that work so not much else to say about it I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're all human. The freaking rules lawyers are the worst, man. I mean,
Yeah,
there's ways to be gracious about it and a way to like genuinely be like, why did why did they do it this way? But like, not the people that are like, excuse me, your fun is
yeah,
wrong.
right, true. So
um, but yeah, and I know we already talked about this, so not to launch into it fully again. But again, needing to touch something for a minute or 24 hours to get the powers, and Matt has also explicitly said that like Prodathos is still sleeping
right,
in
right.
Ruidus. So it definitely feels like Ludinus is going to like trying to find Prodathos, hopefully before it wakes and just suck him up, when he just, if he's just sleeping. And I know it's probably not like literally like a big dog sleeping in a center of the earth type of scenario, but you know what I mean.
I'm really curious. Is he a sorcerer or a wizard?
I don't know. I mean, I thought wizard, but I don't know.
I know they were kind of like figuring it out.
Also, sorry, while you're looking that up, just one random thought. Another potential on like the power level and the playing field of a potential like final battle.
Mhm.
We've already seen one simulacrum, and Allura made it clear that he could have a mini. Like maybe they fight simulacrums. Maybe
Mm.
like if there's 8 of the dude, Bell's Hells, you take one of these. Like Vox Machina will take Prime, or I don't know, but I would not be surprised, and I would be surprised if we didn't see another one of those.
I just, even if it's a simulacrum, man, like, dude's casting 9th level spells. You know,
Yeah.
he casted a power word stun on, I think it was on Keyleth. I mean, just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse about it. I mean, I've made my point, but I feel like there has to be. We've had the same conversation about Otahan. Like it feels like there has to be. He's a wizard, by the way.
Mm. You're a wizard.
Massive power, power advances for this to be a fair fight in its conclusion.
Yeah.
If it is going to be Ludinus that they fight, which it might not be. So
Very interested to see. Want to see this harness used. I did like that, a lot of what ifs, but if they use it and it doesn't break, and they beat Ludinus and it doesn't break, I liked the fact that like Matt baked in like, hey, and can you return this? Because we need to destroy it afterwards. Because like this is like a crazy item, So like, not that I have much more to say about it, but I love like the in-universe like kind of reasoning of like these very powerful people being like, we understand why this needs to be used in this circumstance, but afterward, like we're gonna need that back because that should not exist. Like that needs to be destroyed. Um, I
mhm.
just I liked that.
Yeah. Um, can we move on, or do you want to say
Yeah,
more
yeah,
about
yeah.
this?
No, please.
I don't know if there's really that much like insightful to say about the encounter at the Matron of Ravens Raven Mother's temple,
I
other
thought
than
you
it
were gonna
just
say at
being
the crepe stand at first. Sorry.
um yeah, just a very atmospheric, very cool. The
Yeah.
whole thing was great. The weirdo groundskeeper, I guess.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, you got to be a little weird to be like living in a basement, basically,
for
and like
sure.
keeping after the place. Um, but yeah, what was your? Did you have any like insight or takeaway from that encounter other than just like the matron kind of giving them like a keep at it, kind of thing? I watched it over twice to try to kind of like figure out. Okay, this
Yeah.
is very like, what are the chains? Is that like
Yeah.
self-imposed? Is that Predathos? Like,
I was trying to figure that out too. I don't have like a this is what it means at all.
excuse me,
So
guys.
just randomly grasping at straws, but yeah, I was wondering that too cuz we got the first vision and wherever they were with Fern and Chetney and whoever that was where they saw Vax screaming in the Malleus key. And that was like the interpretation we had back then was the matron kind of being like, "Hey, like I need help. My champion needs help." So with that kind of informing this new one, that's kind of the vibe I got. And the chains are like, even though like, because at the very start of this vision, Matt described an orb again, but then as they
Hmm.
got closer, it like became the matron
Hmm.
who then turned around. So I have to feel like, okay, like she's reiterating that her champion needs help, but then like the deep hole and she's the one wearing the chains. Maybe it's still just atmospheric, metaphor, and it's still kind of representative of Vax, but maybe like it's also her power has been kind of subdued due to the fact her champion's being used in this way. Not that
Yeah.
like she needs Vax, because that's certainly not the power structure there, but like just maybe by consequence of her champion and therefore her power in a way being what has locked Ruidus in place, being what has kind of gotten through the divine gate. Maybe she is weakened because of that. And that would at least make sense to me. And so like maybe that's like the representative of the chains. Like I need help. My champion needs help. And then they climbed up the chains and they broke and she like scattered into the sky. So like
Right.
I don't know. Is that like if I'm freed, this will be good, or like I don't know. I really didn't know what to make of it other than it seemed like I need help.
Yeah.
But how did you parse it any differently or
Definitely more than what I got. Other than just like it's like an acid trip. What's happening here? Um, yeah, in the chains piece, I was definitely curious. Like, is this self-imposed or like external? And it's interesting that when they like were trying to use them to climb, that they shattered. It feels like maybe the matron's saying like, "Hey, you guys have the power to stop this,"
yeah.
which is what they've been told a number of times by the Tree of Atrophy, by the Changebringer. It is a bit interesting that when the Changebringer gave F.C.G the original vision or like the mission,
Mhm.
and Abria's character Deanna, I think, got the charge from the Dawnfather. It's interesting that there hasn't been like a divine like power up, like you mentioned earlier, like it could happen.
Mhm.
And I do kind of wonder if like we are waiting for something like that to happen, or maybe they're unable to with the apogee solstice being held,
Mm,
since divine magic doesn't seem to be working, or excuse me,
true.
healing magic, or not healing, revival magic. What kind of magic is that?
Yeah, but
I'm
they
not
were
following that.
also it was also mentioned I think this episode that like I don't know if divine is the right classification here, but I'm just going to use it. That divine magic and healing magic was like not as potent around the bloody bridge. Wasn't that mentioned?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
clerics were talking about. Um so yeah, certainly it could be something to that effect that the gods either are unable or are unwilling. Like maybe they're
Yeah.
scared to like get close. Not literally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like they're just kind of like pulled back right
Well,
now.
here's something interesting. Just looking up Revivify and Resurrection, their domain is necromancy. They're necromancy spells.
Mm,
So Matron of Ravens, see a connection there. You said it yourself a second ago. Maybe Vax being in the Malia's key has chained her in some way. Maybe that is why that magic doesn't work. Maybe her power is like more constrained than the other deities.
That would make sense. And it would also make sense in terms of, Ludinus obviously doesn't like any of the gods, but he's got some weird thing with the matron. So, like,
Right.
obviously it kind of had to be the matron for the plan he enacted with using Keyleth as bait to draw out Vax, but, like, maybe it was personal and, like, he specifically
Yeah.
wanted to target the matron
Right.
to subdue her more than the others. I like that.
Well, and maybe it means that I wonder if in the short term, if they feel like they should free Vax, but then they've mentioned it like, hey, if we destroy the key, we lose our opportunity to go to Ruidus.
True.
So
Yeah, I did like
that
the
too.
explanation that you can't just teleport because of the Divine Gate situation.
Right.
So that's
Right.
one thing we had been wondering. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't know. So seemingly, if Vax can be saved, it might have to be like a after the climax type of thing, like
But if
after
they,
it's
but
dealt with.
but also if they just destroy the Malleus key and the divine and the the beam's destroyed, doesn't that just put Ruidus back in rotation? Like, why do they even need to go to Ruidus?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe like maybe if I don't know. Maybe if
Does it
he's
make
there, then like and Prodathos gets out, like that's enough.
Yeah.
Like maybe
Yeah.
because he's in the Divine Gate, but also sleeping or imprisoned. Like maybe if he broke out from within that, then he could just escape of his own volition or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's vibes of what if they shot you in the face? Like we get like 30 episodes later, and they're like, why didn't we just destroy the bridge? Like, oh yeah, why didn't we do that? But no, I think it makes a good point. I mean, if Ludinus is on Ruidus, it makes sense for them to go there rather than just like, chopping the beam off, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what else from this episode? The Gwendolyn thing was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely a creepy move from Laudna's part, but Gwendolyn seemed to be into it, until the Delilah part. So I
Right.
guess she just kind of likes those things, which clearly she does. She was into the
Yeah.
spooky and the skeletons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that moment served its purpose, and that's all it was on face
Yeah.
level, on surface
Yeah.
level. But I wonder if via touch could like Gwendolyn have a piece of Delilah in her or anything. Like I don't necessarily think that's the case. That would be bad.
Or would Gwendolyn tell? I mean, they said, let's make sure Percy doesn't find out. Like, would
True.
Gwendolyn tell her dad?
Yeah. I guess she
it's gonna-
wouldn't. She might not know like
Yeah, she
know
just
what that
described it as
was to tell
pure
him.
hatred, right?
But
So,
if she even just told him about the experience, then Percy can probably put two and two together because he knows.
mhm.
At least I think he knows. I mean, yeah, no, he knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that does feel like another shoe that could drop at any moment. So I'm
Yeah, and
yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think there's any more to it than that. I think it was just a really awesome like flavor moment. But using your words, like the shoe to drop, not even so much like regarding Whitestone, there is this whole other Delilah piece
Yeah.
that, it
Yeah.
feels like a couple of characters have kind of gotten not like their personal story like ended, but like sort of like the main breadcrumbs of their story have kind of
Yeah.
they've had like kind of those moments. I think of like Chetney, for example. But there's this huge detail with Laudna of like, is this like just going to be a forever curse for her, or like what exactly is going on with Delilah, and will this come up again as we lead up to this back half of the campaign?
Yeah, I could definitely see it flaring again and like having screen presence in that way. But as far as coming up again where like it's fully dealt with and explored, I'm not sure. Similar to how they did it the first time this campaign, where like going to the dreamscape and fighting Delilah there. I don't know if we'd get something like that again. But I definitely think there could be consequences in this campaign of the fact that she's back at all and having to deal with that. But then I could see that being something that's like a post campaign one shot. Let's go deal with Delilah once and for all, because there might not be space for that in this final act.
Right. I was also wondering too if the party, if someone dies, would they use the vest on, like, well, we can't revive them,
Oh man.
so like,
Yeah.
hey, Lana has this huge evil thing in her. Let's, I'm sure Imogen would be like, don't you dare. And be like, hey, Imogen, come over here. I want to show you something.
That's a really
But,
cool like idea, but yeah, I don't see them using it on each other. I feel like at least one person would have an objection, regardless of
or
who it
like if
was.
Ashton died and they're like, hey, he's got a massive shard in him. Maybe we should just, like, hey, when times are dire, you got to use
You
everything
got
you
to do
got.
what you got to do. I get it.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I
What else?
mean, basically the harness and the lewdness thing were the main things I wanted to talk about. One small last thing that I have, which we already touched on it, but Allura saying that let me just find it exactly. The longer the key holds in the peak of the apogee solstice, a cumulative strain on the very weave of magic begins to build. Over time, the tension on the weave could tear it itself. This could alter or rearrange the fundamentals of magic, or even destroy it, or Exandria. Um, just wanted to bring that up again, which kind of the meta conversation we've been having for a while of like post campaign 3, what could Exandria or
Right.
the D&D landscape for Critical Role look like? And that's another thing with even if everything is the good guys win and everything is successful, that line right there could vastly explain some big changes if
Right.
they wanted to make them. So I just thought that was interesting.
Right. No, I agree with you. Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this one.
Okay. Let me just double check on my end.
He be double checking.
No, we don't even really talk about it, but I was also just curious, like, oh, Keyless mom, like,
Yeah.
all I know is a Vox Machina that,
Cool little cameo.
we know she left. I don't know what happened after that. So,
Yeah. I
little
won't
breadcrumbs like that.
I
So,
won't spoil it here. Just to, I don't know. Some people probably wouldn't want it spoiled, but I can tell you more about that afterwards if you're curious.
I was
Um,
also surprised that, we don't have to get into it really, but I was also a bit surprised that in the war room that seems to be talking about like the future of Exandria, like at stake, that there weren't other members of Vox Machina there.
oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay. I'm glad you brought
That,
this up. I wanted to talk about that.
well, I just thought it was interesting that Keela wouldn't be like, hey, Vex, you should probably really be here, or like, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't even know who's alive otherwise, but I mean, like Pike, like,
Yeah.
hey, buddy, this is about deities and, you're kind of a religious person. Like maybe, I mean, and maybe they're off fighting like these big threats that have popped up, but I guess I was just surprised. When they talked about the war room, I was like, oh, who's going to be there?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I wondered the same thing, and I won't say the name just to skirt spoilers a little bit, but on that same note, I was really surprised somebody wasn't there tinkering on the harness with them. There is another person from campaign 1, Science Bros, for those of you in the know. I was really surprised they weren't there. Um, but then speaking to the War Room and speaking to the other members of Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine, to a lesser extent the Mighty Nine, but we even had Allura mention her connections in Wildmount. That was the Mighty Nine, I'm pretty sure.
okay.
So we obviously know what they're doing. They're Bo and Caleb, and then the events of this reunion. We know they've kind of got their things going on. I think the other members of Vox Machina are like, I think Vex. I mean, Vex being absent was big because she lives there, you know.
Right.
So I think she and Pike, for my guess, are maybe out getting the other members or contacting other allies. And I don't want to get into spoilers of any sort, but I imagine that's why the other members of Vox Machina weren't there because, like, in that moment for this meeting, you don't need everyone in that room. Like, we're just sending this
Right.
lower level party on a scouting mission. But I definitely
Right.
think that they're like, even though they weren't on screen, they're definitely not just like at home chilling. Like, I think they're involved
Right.
in different
And
aspects.
to be fair, we know Matt's thought about it. Like
Yeah.
the OG characters. He hasn't like, oh yeah, what would they be doing? I mean, he's clearly thought about it. So
Really glad somebody on Twitter told me that. Hey man, where are these people?
I knew I forgot someone. Okay, yeah, that satisfies me. Okay, anything else?
No, I don't think so. Just that I'm
Okay.
excited to see where this goes. But for those of you that remember, or if you don't remember, this Thursday is actually not campaign 3. This Thursday is going to be the finale of Candela because that got
Oh,
moved back because of the Mighty Nine. So
yeah.
our
Okay.
next episode of Critical Role isn't until next 2 Thursdays from now.
I'm glad you mentioned that though, because I was wondering whatever happened when you joked about me looking like a Candela character. I was like, did that finish? Is that over? Or okay?
Yeah, just one more. The finale
No.
will be this Thursday. Which we'll be watching it in the Discord. We have, the watch parties for that as well.
Mm.
I probably am not gonna have time. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was thinking about maybe like hosting a watch party to rewatch episodes 1 and 2 for those people that maybe hadn't. I don't know if I'll have time to do that before this Thursday. But maybe somebody else in the community would be willing to do that for us in the Discord. Anyway, that may not happen, but this Thursday, episode 3 will definitely be happening. But yeah, if you're interested in the rewatch or wanting to rewatch, and that would be something you would want to do, definitely hop in the Discord. Let us know if there's enough people. I'm sure we can figure it out. But yeah.
Okay. Don't forget, Sunday nights, watch parties in the Discord as well. Tonight, because we're recording this on a Sunday, tonight is the DM roundtable with Abria, Brennan, and Matt. There may or may not be a conversation about snackage in that if you haven't seen it. But it's a really great roundtable. There's some really awesome insights, especially if you DM a campaign of your own. And those watch parties are always at 7:30 Central Time in our Discord. Just FYI.
Yep. And I don't want to say every time because sometimes I forget, but for those of you that are like time zones, there's an event in the Discord. So if you join the Discord at the top, you'll see an event, and that should automatically change to whatever your local time zone is to tell you exactly when that's happening.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that all we got.
That's all we got.
Alrighty, y'all. Well, appreciate you checking in with us on this special Halloween episode, and we will talk at you soon, I'm sure.